We are here with AnaMaria Danes, and she is a guru in all things trying to accommodate a family, including adults with different needs, children with different needs, and trying to make mealtime work. Mealtime is stressful, even if it's just you and one other person. Now, once you start adding on others in your household and kids who only want chicken nuggets and husbands who only want steak, it starts to get very difficult to even consider cooking. So you might end up with a pizza. You might end up with making multiple meals and just being angry. So today we're going to find out how to really work through multiple dietary needs and pretty much cook in a way that is doable and not, so that you are a short order cook. So Anna's going to help us figure out really how do we suit everybody despite the challenges and make mealtime not stressful or take all day. So please tell us, what do you do with that big family?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
It's so nice to have this conversation. When we were chatting about the summit, I was telling Kelly that in my household, so there's myself, who I'm dairy free. There's my husband, a meat and potato guy.
Yeah.
There's one kid that is 3.5 year old, so he's just over a big leap that he did. One of those cognitive leaps that will cause them to really kind of go back on their adventurousness. I have an 18-month-old getting ready to go through it. And I have my mother-in-law that moved in with us. We're helping her and she's helping us as well. And she's on the low salt diet for her heart, for doctor's
Oh,
orders. So we have to accommodate little bits here and there for everybody. And
yeah.
it's not easy, but it's so doable when you just kind of shift things around a little bit. So we'd love
Oh
to
my
dive
God.
into that.
If you can do it, we can all do it. Talk about from low salt to not adventurous to dairy free. You are the extreme case. So, I mean, if you can do it, we can do it. So,
Yes.
what does
And
mealtime look like in your house?
it's the easiest way we found to do it is sort of meal plan over almost like a 3-day period.
Mhm.
But okay, so now that we're five, one of the things that I notice is I don't have enough pots and pans to cook one meal in to last
Oh,
three. So that's problem number one that you don't often think about.
yeah.
Our solution to that, because I don't necessarily always want to have, two pots of rice going, or
Right.
maybe I do need to upgrade my Instapot. But if you don't want to, what we found is, for example, to make a big batch of, let's say, one thing. So we'll do a big batch of rice that we know will last for 3 days.
Yeah.
So then we have that as our set meal. But nobody really likes to eat the same thing over and over again,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like the chicken and rice when you're trying to lose weight. Did that? Oh my God.
Uh-huh.
You not eat it for like a whole year after that,
It's the worst.
right? So what we found is we have the rice or whatever, the noodles and whatnot,
Yeah.
and we'll change up the sauces. So on a cooking night, we're always cooking something, but it's never really a whole meal. It may
Oh.
just be, um, let's say, maybe we're just doing um, a quick sauce for the noodles,
Mhm.
which is the easiest thing I can think of. Or if we have a batch of rice, maybe we just made on Monday. On
Yeah.
Tuesday, we'll have it with whatever we had as leftovers. Tuesday, we'll do, let's say, 6 chickens for everybody,
Yeah.
and we'll have rice and chicken with our new sauce. And on Wednesday, maybe we still have leftover rice. Maybe we cut up some of that chicken, we fry it up and do it like a fajita style, and wrap
Oh.
it up with on a little bit of rice. With and everybody picks their own toppings.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit easier to accommodate. But some people like tomatoes.
Yes.
I like tomatoes, but not the center. So my
Yeah.
mother-in-law, that's how she accommodates me. She's the tomato lover, but she'll put it. She's so sweet. She puts in a little separate cup for me so
Oh,
that I don't get it. So we kind of just have fun in the kitchen with
yeah.
it at this point. So that's how it generally looks like in my family. We're always cooking something, but it's not your traditional, let's make our side of carbs or our
Yeah.
salad side. We always have either raw or fresh vegetables or roasted, but it's just always slightly, it's almost like deconstructed meals all the time.
I love it. That is so different from what you hear about meal planning, where, it's unrealistic. Just like you said, nobody wants to eat the same thing days on end, which when you meal plan, when you hear like meal planning, it's usually Sunday night, you cook 5 meals and then it's all the exact same thing. My husband does that because he could eat the same thing for years and not be bothered. But that's when I've tried that, it has led us to going out to dinner or ordering a pizza because you're just like, I can't eat another bite of lasagna this week. And
Right?
your deconstructed meals are brilliant because there's no leftovers here, not, no food waste, but you're like kind of just rolling with each that something rolls over, then you make the new thing and that rolls over. And it's I think that's a manageable way to cook because it's never the whole meal. You are so smart.
It's never really the whole meal. And one thing that we have in our fridge all the time is all these base pieces
Yeah.
already almost pre-cooked. So we always have, I think our default is onions, the bell
Yeah.
peppers, the lettuce is ready,
Yeah.
the radishes are everything is cut. Not long enough that they'll go dry, but
Right.
long enough that over that 3 day period I find is my magic point because then
Yeah.
something you'll run out of, but you always have something else that's available. So you're never really completely out. And even if you skip a day or two that you're not doing any prep work,
Yeah.
you still always find that there's plenty in the fridge to make it happen. When you're running
Wow.
low on something, every so often you kind of overlap. So, for example,
Mhm.
maybe we have one steak left over, but we need a new protein, for example,
Right.
for everybody. Well, if everybody's cool with it, sometimes we'll just grab beans. My kids love
Yeah.
beans, but meat is still a very difficult food to eat for kids in
Yes.
general, just from that chewing perspective.
Yes.
They get tired. So
Yeah.
they'll have a couple pieces and they'll be done. So we know we're okay. So
Yeah.
everything is always rolling. And if you run out of something, I find you could still get away with it in those
Right.
busy times when, you know what, I just can't be bothered. Let's just cut up the steak and
Yeah.
and it's nothing sometimes to boil a pot of pasta or a little bit of rice in terms of prep work. You just
Yeah.
put it in, leave it, turn it on, and it's good to go. So that's how we found it works the best when we're on the ball, just prepping our small base items versus
Yes.
planning these elaborate meals. And yeah, it's hard because even at breakfast, I'll share what we've been
Yeah.
making the switch from winter breakfast to summer breakfast may sound
Mhm.
weird, but we do love our porridges in all their shapes and forms and
Yeah.
sizes in our household. But in the summertime, it's a little harder because that was our main meal. We used to have probably
Right.
every other day. And when the kids grew tired, one loves homemade waffles and
Mm.
home pancakes and all of that jazz, but one hates them completely, will not eat them. The other one loves smoothies, and one won't touch them because they're cold.
Oh.
So in those days, I we just learned to make this. If we have to make them, we're using that blender. Basically, that's it. So whatever can
Yeah.
get blended up in there, whether it's a smoothie, goes in cups. Next, we're blending up the pancake mix. So we
Yeah.
try to make it similar, but still try to have those different options available.
That is, oh man, that's challenging. Kids can really, oh, it's cold. Oh, I don't like that. Kids are funny with what they get in their heads, and that using really just one appliance keeps it from being a huge pain. You can get one going and then you prep for the next one, or yeah, you have these base things you eat. Like I totally understand the winter breakfast versus the summer because I don't want oatmeal in the summer. That's not what I'm looking for, or a smoothie in the winter. Some people are
Exactly.
fine with that, and there's no need to change it up if you don't need to. But I love this concept of just really you have your base options and you roll from one day to the next. You use the same appliance for things. It takes what is so unrealistic in my mind, meal prepping on Sunday, which some people pull it off, and that's awesome. I don't pull that off. And
Yeah.
a lot of us find that very intimidating because not only do you have to plan ahead so much to do a week's worth of meals on a Sunday, but you don't necessarily want that. This rolling idea is really unique. I've never heard that before.
It's
Um,
it's something that works for our household, and I know a couple of my mommies that I talk to when they start
yeah,
thinking about it that way, it does make it easier. But also from the perspective of if you think of, let's say, you're running out of your cut vegetables,
mhm,
with that you can turn it into a salad. You can
yeah,
grab those cut bell peppers and put them into anything, a stir fry. You
yeah,
can put them in lunch boxes, right? With a
yeah,
little bit of a dip, and it's easy. And so those are some of the things that you can do
yeah.
when it's ready for you. The cut onions, I swear, that is my must have all the time.
Oh, me too. They go in everything.
They do, they really do. And so
Yeah.
it's really helpful. And the main reason for us why our traditional meal planning systems
Mhm.
that I see out there is every time I try, um, with the little kiddos going through, their own thing,
Yeah.
it's harder. And that's what I specialize in. I'm a picky eating coach, and kids do have their own sensory preferences, and it's hard for us to sometimes remember that we have them too.
Yeah.
But we sometimes just kind of expect them. Well, it's a very normal food. Why don't you like chicken?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there are very good reasons for it. They're still learning how to eat. Um,
Yeah.
Studies show that it takes until they're about 2 years old to actually learn and kind of have a good handle on the proper chewing that an adult would do. And
Wow.
most recently, up until that 4 or 5 year mark, for them to perfect it.
Wow.
Times it's having those tons of options. It's not necessarily that you're making different meals, you just have different foods
Yeah.
available to mix and match in slightly different ways because they tire more easily. I talked a little bit about chewing a piece of steak.
Yeah.
Now that takes a lot more effort than chewing a piece of, let's say, pasta, some
Yeah.
sort of noodle and sauce that is already kind of moist from the sauce, and it just
Yeah.
integrates in a very different way. So kids, as they're building that oral motor skills, it's kind of like working out. You can't go to your 100% when you start is very different than your
Yeah.
100%, a year or two later, right? Is the
Wow.
same thing for them. They just need to have some easy foods with some harder to eat foods. So maybe I'll give you an example that I hear very often that I'm asked about is, so how do I get my kid to eat a green bean, a piece of chicken, and some mashed potatoes? Well, first of all, the first thing that comes to my mind is that they're going to go straight for the mashed
Of
potatoes because
course.
it's easiest to eat. A green bean is, when you think about it, it's stringy. It's a
Yeah.
little bit harder to chew, and so is a piece of steak. So now two out of the three
Yeah.
foods you offered are genuinely difficult for them to do. So
Yeah.
by having those multiple meals, it kind of allows me to have for my kids as I'm teaching them and kind of just guiding them through this,
Yeah.
just some options that there are going to be some harder foods for them to eat. They do need to be exposed to them. So
Yeah.
there is no chicken nuggets. You just have maybe two or three pieces of that steak, and that's totally fine. And then there's easier foods that they can sort of fall back on as well.
Well,
So
this is really interesting. I've never heard, of course, I don't have children, so I haven't, had to hear this. But hearing that the pickiness has a reason behind it. And the fact that they will only eat, you hear only eat macaroni and cheese or only eat chicken nuggets. It's you think about really why might that be so? And your reasoning is, natural. That it's a natural process that it's hard for them to eat. And having really allowing them to eat so-called adult foods, which we'll talk about later, but these so-called adult foods and get exposure, to learn how to eat it. This is a really different way of looking at kids as picky eaters, having to accommodate them.
it is, and it's something. My background, the whole reason why I started doing this is because I was an extreme picky eater as a kid,
Yeah,
and a lot of this information was just not available to my mom back then. Studies were just starting to
yeah,
be done on this topic and exploring why are kids
yeah,
flat out refusing to eat. And I was one of those that I'm in that 5% that truly, I found it more pleasurable not to eat than eat,
Mhm.
depending on what was offered to me. So that bothered and stayed with me for my whole life because I always thought there was something wrong in my mind when
Yeah.
really it's in my body. I'm a super taster. I have more taste buds in my mouth, and your
Oh,
kids
yeah.
kids taste differently too to begin with. As you know, when they're young, their taste buds do go from the back of their mouth. When you think about it, that's where the breast milk gets deposited, right in the back.
Mhm.
Eventually it makes that transition forward, so they start it's from a sensory even perspective. Now they're starting to taste food very differently than they did when they were a year old, at 2 years old, right? So
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, whoa. What is this?
Yeah, I mean, that blows their little minds.
So it really does, and it's so interesting, and I love sharing it because I feel it gives us a very different perspective when we're busy running around, and
Yeah.
sometimes all you just want them to do is eat. I mean, to us, it's a meal. They're normal foods. There's nothing crazy about
Yes.
them.
Yes.
Just don't get it. Like, why is it so hard for you child to focus on eating,
Yeah.
right? I bet a lot of moms can relate to that feeling when you
I'm sure.
can't hold that space for them all the time to understand why. And a lot of it is from that sensory perspective. They just feel it differently. There's always a reason, but it always starts with them learning how to chew properly. And
Wow.
it sounds so silly and almost so um, something that you almost are ready to dismiss right away. But
Right.
you have to, and maybe if we have time, like I can go quickly into just showing you how when they drink milk, when they're under 12 months old and they learn to drink milk from the breast, right?
Yeah.
The sucking motion.
Yeah.
That transfers as they get to 1 year old. That's how they chew food and how they chew purees is by squishing it with their tongue to the roof of their mouth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They never learn to progress, and maybe eventually they chew food with their front teeth,
Yeah.
never really realizing that that work that the tongue has to do is to move food around and keep it on the back molars. Eventually they're going to have to do that, and that's the hard part for them, to keep that food on their back molars between their cheek with their tongue, because food tends to want to drop in front
Yeah.
on the top of your tongue. So if whenever you watch this video, go back and chew something
Yeah.
and just look what happens, right? Because that's how you get to kind of understand what they go through. It's actually hard for them, and ask them, ask your kids, open your mouth, just like randomly when they're chewing something to
Yeah.
see where's the food in their mouth. Because if it's on the top of their tongue, imagine how hard it is to chew a piece of lettuce by trying to
Yeah.
squish it from the top of, with your tongue
Yeah.
to the roof of your mouth, right?
Compared to potatoes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. So that's why, depending on what foods you offer, you have to sometimes remind them, put it on your back teeth. Let's
Yeah.
push it back with your mouth there. I know the food will fall on your mouth, but make it
Yeah.
go. Let's try to hold it there. So it all starts with learning that motion, getting all the way up to on the back molars. And I don't know about you, but nobody ever talked to me when I
No,
was growing up about
I don't remember learning to chew.
right? About learning to chew. But it's a thing. And I bet you anything, if you're going to go and watch your kids and what they do and how they're
Yeah.
chewing, sometimes a lot of food is going to be right on the top of their mouth. And for
Wow.
younger kids, if your little one gags a lot, their gag reflex has to be pushed back. So,
Yeah.
especially if they're in that year to, well, even down to like 8 months
Mhm.
to 2, 3, 4 years old, if they have not done enough work to push that back, um, it can get uncomfortable, especially a piece of lettuce that they can't move easily
Yeah.
from the top of their tongue, right?
Yeah.
So there's little things like that that you would have to consider for the littles.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I have this sort of thing stuck in my mind that food is food. There's no kid food and there's no adult food. And I know we talked a lot about this, you and I, but we just have to teach them how to eat adult food. And sometimes
Yes.
it's as simple as, putting a piece of chicken on a stick and
Yeah.
showing them, like physically showing them, it
Yeah.
goes in the back of your teeth. You have,
Wow.
if you ever do arts and crafts,
Yeah.
you know how you have more power in the scissors when you put the piece of paper in the back, and that's like your jaw. You have more power here, so the food gets squished easier. So even my 3.5-year-old, when I did this with him, and well, I guess he was a lot younger then, and I said, "Oh, is that easier?" He's like, "Oh yes, mommy." So they will know,
Yeah.
they will understand, and they will start doing it on their own as well because
Wow.
it's easy.
Do you
So,
find that with this idea of adult food and kid food, essentially, what's easier to chew? Kid foods like a peanut butter and jelly or, macaroni and cheese. Do you
right.
do you find that when we think about picky adults, the ones who don't really want fruits and vegetables, don't they want kid food essentially? They could order off the kids menu and be satisfied. Do you think there was something missed in this development? Do you think there's a connection?
It definitely could. For adult picky eaters, so I'm probably a perfect example because I still am picky in
Hmm.
certain areas. A lot of that part comes for me from the sensory issue,
Hmm.
not so much the oral piece.
Yeah.
In adults, the adults that don't chew well are those that make noise when they chew.
Hmm.
So if you ever had someone, so you're gonna have to excuse me, but I will demonstrate
Yeah.
because I want to show you because in a way it's
Yeah.
kind of endearingly funny. When you chew by squishing food to the roof of your mouth, it makes that like
Ew.
right.
Ew.
It is.
We
There's
all
not
know
too
those.
many back molars, so that's more how it presents when they're older, and there
Yeah.
can be some food choices 100% that are dictated because of that. But
Yeah.
don't underestimate that sensory aspect as well, because some of us are more sensitive, for example, um, to smells or to sounds or
Yeah.
things like that. Or eyesight is a perfect one.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's so easy for us to acknowledge that some people can't see very well and you get glasses, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can't taste very well. There's something really you can get to get you to taste a little better or taste a little less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just how you feel the world around you. Some people can't, like the nails on chalkboard. That's a sensory thing. And eating is one of the two activities that humans will do. There's only two that uses all eight of our sensory systems. So it's
Wow.
a difficult task to begin with.
Yeah.
In adults, for adults, a lot of it would be the same. So I find a lot of the things that I do for myself and with my clients is taste training, and we do it. And I know we had spoken about your typical example where you have children that are picky eater,
Ugh.
us as moms who want to eat healthy, the husbands are stuck in their meat and potato
Yes.
land, and how do you get the whole family to eat a little bit better? And I
Yeah.
made that mistake when I tried to go from, I had just graduated and I'm like, everybody's gonna eat healthy
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Right. No. If only.
Right? And it didn't work. And that's because no matter where you are, whether you, all of us, you can think of foods that you just don't like.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's just how it is. There's just some foods you're never going to really enjoy.
Hmm.
But to get yourself, if you know that you need to move and enjoy something different, maybe for a health reason, maybe just to feel good, feel a
Hmm.
little bit,
Yeah.
whatever that why is for you, you have to make those small changes from that sensory perspective too.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a very simple example. um, Kids in general, bitter, it's a protective mechanism. It's there.
Yeah.
Most poisonous things in the world, in the plant world, are bitter, so it's a
Yeah.
way that we evolved to avoid it. So
Huh.
when I talk about, I had mentioned earlier that I'm a super taster. So about 25% of the populations are like that. They just have more taste buds.
Hmm.
All that means is that they taste bitter just more intensely, almost to the point that sometimes it's spicy.
Wow.
Which is, and spices are painful. They're not pleasurable. It's painful.
Wow.
In all honesty, it's not even something that you kind of can control.
Yeah.
About 50% are just normal tasters. They have that good amount, and 25% are non-tasters. And those are people that can eat anything. They could drink the Tabasco sauce straight and still
Wow.
not particularly feel anything. So there's that range too, right?
Yeah.
So with bitter, it's a big one. And the example I wanted to give is with kids. Sometimes what cuts through bitter is salt. So if you ever had to sprinkle salt on your raw vegetables to find them nice and
Mhm.
enjoyable to eat, that's why, because it's just
Interesting.
getting through that bitterness. And sometimes you have to go and make those adjustments um, before you can eat that, even that piece of sweet bell pepper. It's sweet, but some people like me, it was bitter. So I
Yeah.
had to eat salt, and then little by little, now I don't need it. But you train
Oh,
your taste buds, and it's by making those small sensory changes
yeah.
little by little. So with our husbands that have that love the meat and potato,
Uh-huh.
well, you can do things like the homemade burgers are one that I actually can get my husband to get on board with because still beef, but
Yeah.
I can add so much to it and make it still so juicy and so good that I think I've added a whole stew, like a whole like almost like a half cup to a cup of parsley into our last batch,
Oh my
and it
gosh.
was delicious. And he ate it, and we added, and you could do everything from the sweet potato with vegetables to
Yeah.
just regular potatoes if you want to bulk them up and add that moisture. So I digress, but the point is that it's something that is still a little bit similar. They still love the burgers, so it's still similar, but you can gently start playing around with that flavor. And
Yeah.
that's with the picky eater, little people. Um, it's all about again mixing and matching some easy foods, some
Mhm.
harder to eat foods, and just getting them through that. And at one point, we do have to recognize as parents that all right, they probably just don't like smushy food or this kind of food,
Yeah.
not just like we have our own preferences too.
Exactly.
But it's all the same food that we eat. If every so often we do make chicken nuggets, oddly enough, one of them does not eat them very well
Really?
because
The only child alive.
right?
Yeah.
Well, the other one doesn't eat pizza. So
Oh
even if
my
I
gosh.
want it's so funny because I got them to a good point that if I am too busy, I cannot do takeout. I can't do anything that is not
Yeah.
homemade because they just won't eat it. It's like, no. So at birthday parties, he'll eat the pepperoni off the pizza, for example, and you eat the rest. I'm like, okay, that's okay.
I
I'll
need
take
them to
it. I'll
I
take
need
it.
them to come coach me. The not eating the pizza and all that. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah,
Oh my gosh. So
I do miss the pizza with the cheese. I will admit to that one.
yeah. Yeah. How do you find when kids keep refusing things? Like, for example, when I was a kid, I would I would pretty much have a battle of wills with my parents at the dinner table with a glass of milk. And I would sit there till it was warm and they'd have to pour me a new one. Then I'd still challenge them and sit there. And, when I got trickier and sneakier, I'd then pour it down the sink when they left the table. And to this day, I think milk's disgusting. I don't like it. There's no good reason. I just don't like it. How do we find what is the process to see with your kids where they end up just they're not gonna eat it, they're not gonna drink it, it's not happening. How do you find that so you don't continue wasting your time, trying to push something on them?
On that same food? That's a really good question. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is you had mentioned your parents were forcing you, almost like
Yeah.
take a bite, do this, just
Yes.
have this. I'm sure they probably bribed you. They probably tried the
Uh-huh.
whole punishing. You're not getting up the table until you're done. So those are all super familiar things because I'm sure, like I've had all of them done on me by my poor
Uh-huh.
parents, trying to get me to eat different foods. But it's really not the best way because I'm sure that triggers that stress response.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as adrenaline gets released, appetite gets shut down. The body does move blood away from the digestive system. It thinks
Really?
you need it, and it moves it to the muscles because it thinks it either needs to fight or run.
Wow.
Now, if they were not hungry and they were faking it, they were giving you reasons, now they're genuinely going to tell you the truth when they say, I'm not hungry anymore, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
And so that is the worst thing we could do from putting that pressure on.
Yeah.
So at meal times, you know, that's why I love the way we kind of stumbled upon our kind of meals is that
Yeah.
you will have it family style. And that's the biggest thing to sit down together and just have all the meals.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even meals. I want to call them foods because you're not preparing like 10 different side dishes
Right.
or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like everybody can pick. Maybe you want a pickle. Maybe you want some sauerkraut, or
Yeah.
maybe you want some kimchi with a little bit of your meat or whatever you have on your
Yeah.
plate. But you can pick, and it's easy. Just take the jar out and bring it, right?
Yeah.
So But having it that way really helps you and your little picky eater take the pressure off. Let them choose what to put on your plate.
Right.
And talking about that properties of that food, this feels cold, this feels hot, this is sticky,
Yeah.
this is slimy. Obviously, you're gonna have to adjust the language for the older ones.
Yeah.
But everybody, as adults, we've eaten so much that we kind of have a memory or a repertoire to say,
Right.
you know, my best friend was so instrumental in helping me eat because she would describe what that food felt like when she would eat it.
Oh,
I would decide, you know what, I think I'm going to go for it. Or I would say no. So that's something that has helped me. And the same way, we have to help our little ones
yeah.
build that vocabulary. And by building that vocabulary and feeling it, getting them to touch it with their hands, you're going to be able to better ask those questions. What is it about this food that bothers you? Because, for example,
Right.
with a smoothie, with my oldest, um, I didn't know if it's because it's cold. It's very specifically cold, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was a texture. I didn't know if it was a taste. There's so many different things that it could be.
Right.
With the milk, same thing. Some kids really like hot milk. Some kids like it really cold. Other kids like it with chocolate, right?
Yeah.
You just don't know what to pinpoint and what to work on.
Right.
So the easiest thing is to start having that conversation and using descriptive like words, how it feels like, how it tastes like, because then you'll be able to ask them, hey, do you want that milk warmed up? Why don't we try it differently?
Yeah.
And your efforts are going to be better directed. So in kids mainly in the range of, I'm going to say 5 to 9 years old, they are in that cognitive thinking where it's a very black and white world for them.
Yes.
They think, right? It's really based. They don't understand the concept of a white lie. It's
Yeah.
all like they tell on each other like crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's just that age. And the biggest thing with them is that they think that the way you put the food in front of them is the way they have to eat it. And we
Oh,
all know that's not true. I
yeah.
mean, how many cookbooks and cooking shows and it's so important to emphasize that hey, when you put a food on your plate, look at what mommy does. Mommy likes
Yeah.
to dip it in ketchup, daddy likes to dip it in mustard,
Yeah.
grandma likes to dip it in the Dijon version of the mustard, right?
Yeah.
So we have to show them there's different things you can do to them to make it better
Yeah.
to eat. So I feel I supposed to backtrack and kind of put my thoughts in order here would be to have the conversation about giving them that vocabulary of foods and asking them, oh, what is it that bothers you about that
Right.
food? Or what doesn't feel good to you? And then you can adjust. Because remember how a little bit earlier we talked about you're going to have to make a sensory change little by little. For some kids, it's as simple as giving them a pancake in a different shape, freak out. It's completely different to them. It is, right? From a sensory perspective,
Yeah.
visually they look different, so they must
Yeah.
taste different, right?
Right.
One to do it with a cookie cutter. Now it's different because they saw the whole pancake and they did it, and now they kind of know just a piece of that. So you
Right.
sometimes your steps are going to have to be so much smaller than you ever thought possible. And other times when you nail that, you know what? He doesn't like cold smoothies, for example. I'm going to
Right.
try a warm smoothie bowl and
Yeah.
see if that works. And it's just about trying different things and kind of with those things in mind,
Yeah.
with that philosophy so in mind.
I like this. Yeah, it sounds like some work, but these little changes and actually talking to the kids, or, if even adults in your life can't really express why they don't like something, it's good information to have that, to understand, okay, well, how do we change this? How do we make this so we can still all sit down to one prepared meal with different options and, really get what the pickiness is about. And I love this because it really steps away from that whole concept we have that you need to have these separate meals for everybody. I mean, you don't have a mommy meal of a salad. It got real stereotypical there. Or a daddy meal of a steak and a kid meal of mac and cheese. Because my God, that's just exhausting. And
It is. It's tiring and it's much easier. even, at first it's always difficult when you have to make a change in anything.
Yeah.
But when you really sit down and think about it, it's much easier to have a few different food options that everybody can pick from, everybody can talk about it. And when you think about the conversation at dinner time, we had, like, there's some dinner times that we're just crying from laughing so hard,
Yeah.
and other times where it is just completely stressful.
Yeah.
You go into that default mode where everybody's gonna be a little tired, cranky, and
Yeah.
it's so much easier to have something nice to talk about and talk about the food, or talk about your stories of the day,
Yeah.
instead of just focusing on forcing somebody to eat something, whether it's your
Yes.
husband or your kids, right?
And day in, day
Yeah,
out, 3 meals a day, that constant just that fight is just God, it's no wonder moms just say, fine, chicken nuggets. That's
right.
exhausting. I mean, even in our house, we we have a little bit of a divide. My husband eats anything. I am a vegetarian, and we've made it work because he essentially likes vegetarian foods, and well, he'll make something else if he wants. But there's been this stress of when we have a child, then what? And you've taken that, of course, a child's still theoretical here in our house, but you've taken that stress away of we already, as two adults, eat differently. Add in a child where, I'm not going to make that child be a vegetarian. That was my choice. But allowing us to have family meals and be able to choose from that family style, like literal family style meal is just this is all such a relief to hear. And that's been kind of it's been a bit of a theme throughout the summit. There have been things that these experts are saying that are just like a relief, where we don't have to make life hard. We don't have to make mealtime stressful and just like you are taking orders.
Exactly. It's a bit of an effort at first, I
Mm-hmm.
feel, to change your own mindset about it
Yeah.
and your own attitude about it. Because I feel once you do that, and I had to go through this process as well of,
Yeah.
when back when I was making super, super healthy meals and nobody wanted to eat them because they were
Yeah.
too far off of what they were used to.
Right.
I had to learn to say, you know what, it's okay. We're gonna tackle this one super baby step at a time.
Yes.
And okay, now it's okay for your husband, and you have to get to a place where, if he says, you know what, I found this meat a little too dry, or I would have
Mm-hmm.
liked the spice a little bit this way, that's fine.
Sure.
Because now I know what to make next time.
Yeah.
Other than before, I was like, doesn't make my meal, getting all upset about it,
Right.
and crying. So it's fine because now, hey, it's just another option now that I have to
Yeah.
play around with. So you have to do almost a little bit of that. All right, let's just reset this for a
Yeah.
second and really think about how I want this to go, and make it adjust
Yeah.
and flexible. Is probably the easiest way to please everybody without personalizing everything at the same
Right.
time.
That if I were to come away with one thing that makes this a relief for anybody cooking for more than just themselves is options. Just, within reason. Options within reason so you can customize and not personalize. Like customizing is different. You put out a bunch of stuff, people choose what they want. And, using this idea of the rolling meal planning and having things just available to you, that just takes the stress off of it. And I think that's what we have to make this a lifestyle, not meal planning in a structured way, not a diet, not personalizing, but a way that we can all eat without stressing about eating, which
That's
is the
so true.
goal.
That's so true. It's supposed to be a good bonding time, and
Yeah.
sometimes, and sometimes if you think that's the goal, um, you forget. You forget if you don't remind yourself of the purpose of sitting down and no distractions, no TV,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. And it makes mealtime more fun to have these different options out there. And it's that freedom to try some new things. Even the little picky eaters can try something new. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine.
You know, and one of the last things that I definitely want to share is on this idea of our own mindset of how you approach and how you are present at the mealtime makes the whole world of a difference. And I wanted to share a mealtime that we had literally
Yeah.
just a couple days ago because things were starting to not go so well, and how you can turn it around just by being like, I'm gonna say
Right.
happy. I don't know what else to describe it as. So we all sat down, and my 3.5-year-old is at the stage where he feels the need to control everybody in the family.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Since he doesn't get to say what I do make, he gets to choose whatever he wants, but he doesn't get to say what I do make. He does get to choose things like his cutlery, where everybody sits, where he
Oh,
sits, things like that, right? To give him
yeah.
some control back.
Yeah.
So he had started to rearrange everybody around and whatnot. So we as adults were like,
Yeah.
all
Just,
right, kid,
okay.
we're gonna keep it in right now, but you better make up your mind. This is the last time we're moving, type of things. So we did. So my husband ended up being pinned between my 3.5-year-old and my 18-month-old, which is where I usually sit and cut up all their foods or
Oh,
refill or do all those little tasks for them
yeah.
that sometimes they need help with, right? And I just sat beside my 3.5-year-old and my mother-in-law. So I was essentially free to
Yeah.
just eat, right? So I'm just sitting back and having a good time. I'm chuckling at my husband, he's not used to, he's used to just being able to guzzle down his food and
Right.
not necessarily, when the little one asks for carrots, they're on the other side of the table for him to reach out and get it and like, help him serve himself. So I was having a good time. Let's put it that way. But my 3.5-year-old was not particularly being so fabulous. He was seeking his father's attention, who is being spent on the youngest
Hmm.
one. So he's starting to do all sorts of different things that are attention seeking. So like yelling, rolling his eyes, throwing himself back. I was
Yeah.
doing the whole like, yeah, your typical thing. So I'm
Yeah.
watching this kind of unfold and seeing, okay, I have to be prepared for this and see how I can intervene here. And my my 3.5-year-old started doing the whole like and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. So I started going like this to his mouth to the tune of Jingle Bells.
Oh,
We did not all erupt in singing Jingle Bells at the table like 3, 4 times in a row because it's just so fun. All
yeah.
the while, and I guess at daycare, my youngest, he's used to holding hands when they sing. So now my
Oh,
youngest, he's so cute. He reaches for his dad's hand and grandma's hand is on one side. So we're all just sitting around singing Jingle Bells in the middle of the summer at the table.
oh,
And we all laughed so hard. And it was just a great mealtime that I
yes,
feel we were able to turn around. But all because instead of when you're tired, my default probably would have been to say, honey, stop it, pay attention, eat your food, take a
yes,
bite, time to get serious, versus how can I just turn this around and give him some positive attention, you know,
yeah,
and whatnot. So it's all about that attitude. I can't stress that
yes,
enough because I know there's a difference in my family when I am different and I come
yes.
differently.
I love that. That's advice that I did not expect to even hear because mealtime is stressful for parents, especially. You come home from work, you're tired, and, you know, kids want to control things, they want to be picky. And making mealtime into that joy, I think it teaches them also that, meals are supposed to be fun. It's not about shoveling down food and moving on. And I think that is the perfect cap for this that, options, talk to them, make it fun, make it a joyful family experience. Or, if you're out with friends, even remember that. It's eating together is a social experience. And I think all of your advice takes us away from that, food is fuel or food makes me feel better. Food has magical properties of some sort. And it gets down to really what these meals are supposed to be about and sharing that together. So thank you for everything today. This was just enlightening as, a person with no children. It's enlightening to think about and, put some perspective in what a lot of my clients have said and friends have said. And I think this is just wonderful. So thank you so much for today.
Oh, you're most welcome. I hope you found it helpful and put in your back pocket for when it's
Oh,
your turn.
absolutely. Thank you very much.
Oh, most welcome.